RHOBH alum Crystal Minkoff finally tells the story of how she lost 14 friends. Thanks to Sutton Strack, we'll never forget at least two memorable moments with Crystal Minkoff on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She was the one who pointed out Crystal's ugly leather pants and the fact that the brunette beauty lost 14 of her close friends. Sutton threw that friendship exodus in Crystal's face during one of their many altercations. Andy Cohen questioned her about it at the season 12 reunion, but he didn't get a satisfactory answer from the second season housewife then. However, now that she's no longer on the show, Crystal is ready to spill the tea. The 41-year-old shared the story with Cynthia Bailey during an episode of their podcast. Here's how RHOBH alum Crystal Minkoff lost 14 friends. Crystal talked about the friendship drama on the Humble Brag podcast after having us wait years to find out the real tea. The claim that she lost 14 friends is very true, and it seemingly stemmed from jealousy over snagging a diamond on RHOBH. One of her friends wanted a spot on the Beverly Hills franchise for quite some time, but when she got the opportunity, her husband didn't want her to do the show. Crystal advised her that if her family was against it, she shouldn't do it. A few years later, Crystal was chosen to join the RHOBH as the first Asian American in the franchise. I told my friend, who wanted to do it, and the conversation, while it wasn't awful, it wasn't great, shared Crystal. It was, why is it good enough for you and not me? The former Bravo star said she explained that their situations were different because she had the support of her husband, Rob Minkoff. After that, we hung up, and we had a nice text back. And then I never heard from her again, ever, said Crystal. Never spoken once again, that was about 4.5 years ago. Crystal says her ex-friends tried causing drama with her castmates. Crystal revealed that the drama didn't end there because the rest of her friend group also dropped her over her RHOBH casting. There was a day in which I see a photo of our group of friends all together, and I'm like, why am I not there? And I called every single one, and no one answered, said the mom of two. Crystal said she wasn't just iced out, her former friends also tried to jeopardize her relationship with her castmates by dimming them and making up lies. Crystal Minkoff, the soft-spoken and poised alum of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, sat in the corner booth of a chic Beverly Hills cafe, her perfectly manicured hands cradling a steaming cup of matcha. Her expression was serene yet resolute, as if she had carried a secret too heavy for too long and had finally decided to share it with the world. The story of how she lost 14 friends had been whispered about in Bravo fan forums, dissected in gossip columns, and debated on social media. Some speculated it was a fallout over money. Others believed it involved betrayal or perhaps one of those infamous housewives scandals. Crystal's silence had only fueled the curiosity, but today she was ready to break her silence. I didn't lose them all at once, she began, her voice calm but tinged with an undertone of pain. It wasn't some dramatic, table-flipping moment. It was gradual. Like a slow leak in a balloon. One day you look around, and the room is empty. The spark. Crystal's story began 5 years ago at what should have been a joyous occasion, her 35th birthday party, held at an exclusive Malibu estate. The guest list included the who's who of Beverly Hills, socialites, influencers, and business moguls, including her 14 closest friends. The event was lavish, even by Beverly Hills standards, with custom cocktails, a string quartet, and a 10-foot-tall cake adorned with edible gold. It was the kind of party where you'd expect nothing to go wrong, Crystal said, letting out a dry chuckle. But that night I overheard something that changed everything. One of her closest friends, Melanie, had been speaking to another guest, unaware that Crystal was within earshot. The words stung like a slap. Crystal's great, but she's so controlling. It's like, if you're not living up to her standards, you're out. Melanie's comment wasn't the worst part. It was the laughter that followed as the other guests chimed in with their own grievances about Crystal. In that moment, the glittering world she'd have carefully curated began to crumble. The fallout. Crystal didn't confront Melanie that night. Instead, she internalized the pain, replaying the conversation in her head until it became a loop she couldn't escape. I'm not perfect, she admitted. I can be particular, and I've always been the one to plan, to organize, to keep things running smoothly. but I never thought my friends resented me for it. Over the following weeks, Crystal noticed a shift. Group texts went unanswered, invitations to brunches and charity events dried up. When she did manage to see her friends, the atmosphere was strained, filled with polite smiles and surface-level conversation. It felt like being ghosted in slow motion, she said, her voice breaking slightly. One by one, they started to fade away, and the ones who stayed, they weren't really there for me anymore. They were there for the lifestyle, the connections, the perks of being in my orbit. The turning point. The final straw came during the pandemic. Like many people, Crystal leaned heavily on her social circle for emotional support. She organized virtual wine nights, sent care packages, and tried her best to keep the connections alive despite the physical distance. But her efforts weren't reciprocated. When my father passed away, I expected them to rally around me, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. But instead, I got silence. Not a single one of them showed up for me, not even with a text or a phone call. That's when I realized I had been pouring my heart into empty vessels. The aftermath. Crystal took a long, hard look at her life and decided to make a change. She stopped reaching out to those who had abandoned her and focused on the people who truly cared about her, her family, her husband Rob, and a few steadfast friends who had always been by her side. I went to therapy, she revealed. I needed to understand why I had attracted these kinds of relationships and why I had held on to them for so long. The truth is, I was afraid of being alone, but I've learned that being alone is better than being surrounded by people who don't value you. Lessons learned. When asked what she would say to those 14 friends if she had the chance, Crystal didn't hesitate. Thank you, she said firmly. Thank you for teaching me what real friendship isn't. Thank you for showing me that I deserve better. Losing you was painful, but it was also the best thing that ever happened to me. Today, Crystal is in a much better place. She's rebuilt her social circle with people who uplift and support her. She's also become a vocal advocate for mental health and emotional well-being, using her platform to encourage others to reevaluate their relationships and prioritize their own happiness. Life is too short to waste on people who don't see your worth, she said, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. Losing 14 friends felt like the end of the world at the time, but it was really just the beginning of a better chapter. As the interview wrapped up, Crystal's phone buzzed with a text from one of her new friends. She smiled, her earlier sadness replaced by a sense of peace. You know, she said, finishing her matcha, maybe I didn't lose 14 friends. Maybe I just made room for the right ones.